Students, hi, welcome back. Kathy Robertson here, your instructor for Business 101. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm wearing red, you can't really tell. It is Tuesday, the second day of week two. Week two's information is posted up on Blackboard. I'm going to kind of go through it for you a little bit so that you have it. Thank you.
Showing up on the first page of Google.
I have no idea what this is doing. I'm not sure what that was about. All right, so looking at week two, if you click on, most of you did a great job. I'm looking through all of your homework and I will get back to you by the end of the day today as a response, and I will hopefully have all of that homework posted and your discussion grades posted there under the grade book. So if you go into Blackboard, you can, along the top, for those of you that are new to Blackboard, it says content, starts on the left side of your screen, content, calendar, discussions, gradebook, messages, analytics. If you go under gradebook and you click on it, you should be able to see then there should be in there week one homework and discussion one. And so those, I'm going to go through all your discussions to make sure that you put a company in there. I will be introducing in week three, I will introduce the project. So as long as you picked a company, you should be good to go. So I will go through those this afternoon and this evening and make sure that your points are in there for discussion and homework. And so you know that you've turned them in. Everyone, I've been looking through the homework, everyone has done a pretty good job with homework 1 and 2, or chapters 1 and 2 from week 1. Now in week 2, we're going to get into a few other items. So if you look at chapter 3 from the text, again, if you are interested in the text, I know there are a few in the library at West that you can borrow. However, you can also buy them on eBay. If you would like to buy one, let me know. I will find one for you for like $5 or $6 that you can get. So in chapter 3, the world marketplace, business without borders. And then chapter 4, we start to talk about business ethics and social responsibility. So both of those, business ethics is a huge area of research and trying to figure out how we can make businesses, they can be profitable, but also be ethical. So first in chapter 3, so I do have a video for you this week. First in chapter 3, if you look through the PowerPoint, you will find, and this is the talking about some of the things relative to opportunities when we talk about world marketplace, right? We live in that society now that we can communicate globally. We sell products globally. We have consumers globally. So when you look through chapter 3, and in particular when you do a review with the PowerPoint, you will talk a little bit about international trade and innovation, how that works on a global level, right? Some of the factors there. You'll also talk about opportunity costs, this idea of the opportunity of giving up the second best choice when making a decision. So when you make a decision, one of the things that we talk about also in economics a lot is that when you make a decision to do something with your time, you're giving up your time that you could be doing something else, right? So when you're working on homework for this class, there is something else you are giving up, whether it's having dinner with friends, whether it's relaxing and watching TV, whether it's going to bed early, whether it's being with family, whether it's working, you give up something else, right? So that's called the opportunity cost. The opportunity you get what you also gave up. So it's not just the actual cost of something. It is also the aggregate cost, right, of what you gave up that you could have been doing. So opportunity cost, make sure that you have an idea about that. Absolute and comparative advantage are things that we'll talk a little bit more about in economics. So there are some things that touch on in chapter 3, exchange rates, how we do different types of trading, some things relating to strategies for reaching global markets, and exporting and importing and how that works, right? A lot of the products, if you look at the products that are just sitting around you wherever you're at, right? Whether it's your clothing, your book bag, your shoes, you'll realize that there are a lot of things from a lot of different places. And so we think about that when we think about importing. The U.S. also exports many different items throughout the globe. And then we talk a little bit about foreign licensing, foreign franchising. Barriers to international trade. some of the things that are also barriers to the international marketplace, right? If you are working with fellow employees that are in different countries, there are sometimes cultural differences, economic differences, political and legal differences, right? We see that from a global standpoint. So some of those items are, in the forefront when we're talking about international trade. Now, a couple of the things in this free trade, this idea of NAFTA, right? That we've seen some changes relative to free trade. Now, this text is from several years ago, but there are different things relating to tariffs, right, that can make trade with other countries tricky. So some countries may charge us tariffs, basically like a tax, to sell in that country. Or if goods are coming into our country, into the U.S., sometimes we will tax those goods in a way of a tariff. And so without those tariffs, countries that maybe can produce goods very cheaply because of labor conditions, that they don't have the same type of things like minimum wage and specific, OSHA, things that are overseeing the workplace. So the costs are cheaper often in developing nations, right? And so they can make goods a lot more cheaply. And so one of the ways that our country can make it a level playing field for U.S. companies is to charge a tariff. And so then if a company is sending items over to the U.S., and they're from another country, we charge them a tax, right? And so they have to tax. They attach that tax to the goods then that are coming into this country. So if goods were coming in, they could sell them for $2, but there's a tax on them that's maybe $1 a good. Now they need to sell them for at least $3 to make up for that tax, right? So sometimes we will see that. So there are a lot of different things. So we just touch a little bit on free trade. World Bank, right? 188 member countries that work together. So companies can use that World Bank as a way of getting rid of currency issues, right? So if we're trading in the U.S. with maybe someone that uses the euro, how do we do those exchanges, right? And so there's a couple other things on here. NAFTA that started in 94. There have been quite a few changes to NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and that was between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. There have been some changes with Mexico and the U.S. So there isn't completely free trade. The European Union, which we also know is seeing some changes, right? And that's composed of 28 European countries, but that is also on the chopping block. So that's from chapter 3. And so when you review that PowerPoint, right? You read that chapter and review that PowerPoint. Hopefully you will be thinking about some of those global issues. When you pop into chapter 4 starts to talk about business ethics and social responsibility, right? And so how do we really do that when we're talking about companies? They're trying to cut corners, but they also are trying to be socially responsible. And so a few of the things that we think about when we're talking about ethics, right? And I know there's a really nice in chapter 4, if you're looking in the text, there is a really, let me see if I can find it for you. There is a nice chart that kind of lays out some of the ethical issues that we see. And I'm going to give you an exact page. Exhibit 4.1, page 58 of your text. Really does a nice job of this legal ethical matrix. And talking about ethics, this idea of right and wrong, good and bad. And the video this week, the extra video, I think it's about 18 minutes long, starts to talk about that. It's a professor that questions, can we really, is that an oxymoron? Is that, our businesses, could they ever really be ethical fully and still try to cut corners, right? And try to make profits. And so business ethics, we think of this idea, application of right and wrong in a business setting. So think about this chapter is a lot about ethics, and we talk about some universal ethical standards. That legal ethical mix, I review it again in the PowerPoints. Also the universal ethical standards. Individuals, right? How our individual ethical frameworks operate. And then organizations also have a framework. You may have worked for different companies that seem more ethical, not only toward their employees, but in their business practices. And maybe you've worked for a company, hopefully not, that maybe use less than ethical business practices, or maybe they were less than ethical when dealing with employee issues. Oftentimes you'll see something called a code of ethics that I know when you were probably in high school, some of you may have been a while. I believe we have a code of ethics too. I know most schools make you sign a code of ethics that say, okay, this is how we want you to behave as a student. And I know we are working on having that code of ethics up there. This idea of social responsibility as well. Some companies are more likely to engage in socially responsible behavior. Now, being socially responsible, though, means giving back and being proactive. And some companies are not able to fully recognize this in their daily activity or in any of their activities because they feel that they are not getting a monetary gain from it. Where in the era that we live in, though, oftentimes we would prefer to put our dollars toward a company or support a company that reflects our own ethical feelings or our own social responsibilities. And so we might want to shop at a certain place, right? Or we might buy a certain product because of what it represents, because the company is socially responsible. So companies are becoming more in the last I would say 5 to 8 years, we have seen that a lot of companies are understanding they need to be socially responsible to stay in business. It's a key component because people support those types of, it's important to consumers. And so some companies now have a chief social responsibility officer, right? They have someone that actually, or a team that actually promotes and looks for socially conscious ways for the company to behave. Also talk about planned obsolescence, one of my favorites, right? Deliberately designing products to fail in order to shorten the time between consumer purchases. And this, from a socially responsible standpoint, is not, like our light bulbs, for instance, are designed to last a certain amount of hours. However, most of you have probably heard about certain light bulbs that were designed 100 years ago that are still burning, right? And so they can design light bulbs to basically last forever. They can design tires to basically last forever, but they don't. Any of you that have bought tires know that you can pay for a different amount of miles, right? If you pay less money, you buy the tires that only last for 30,000 miles. You pay a mid-range amount of money, you can get 40 to 50,000 miles out of your tires. And the most expensive tires, maybe they say they're 60,000 miles, even though they can make tires basically that you could use for every car that you ever have, right? But they won't do that because companies rely on you to have to buy new tires. If they didn't, guess what? They would go out of business. And so there are several examples that you see in our daily life of planned obsolescence. Let's see, what else is important from chapter 4? Corporate responsibility, sustainable development. This idea of reducing the carbon footprint is more important than ever, right? We hear all about, green technology, and we hear about, saving the environment is more important than ever, right? And this idea of global warming, whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it, it is still an item that is, on the forefront of a lot of our news and political agendas. So that is chapter 4. It dives deep into thinking about ethical responsibility, social responsibility by companies. Now, the video. So for this week, you're going to read chapters 3 and 4, review the PowerPoints, and then there's a video called Is Business Ethics an Oxymoron? And I know the fella here, he really kind of dives deep into and gives a few examples of how can businesses actually, operate. They can operate legally, but it might be unethical, right? And you'll see that in the legal ethical mix. So then for this week, there are, the homework assignments are separate. I forgot why I did that, but there are 2 separate. It says homework 2. So chapter 3, the world marketplace, and I think I have there's an application question this week. And so you have 4 questions from chapter 3 and then an application question. And again, you can just download those and work right on them because they're Word docs. And then chapter 4, you will see let's see how many questions chapter 4 has. 4 questions. So 4 questions for each, and there's an extra application questions for chapter 3. There is no discussion post this week. I will be combing through your discussion posts and chiming in, but you have no discussion posts this week. You do have a video and an application question on your homework. Now, if you have questions throughout the week, again, remember to email me. You can text me. If you're having trouble with your email, you have that option as well. And be checking your email. I chime in. If someone sends me questions like I don't understand this, oftentimes I will either try to make a short video or send an email that says, hey, I had this question. Some of you might also have the same question. If you ever want to meet up on campus, I am on West Campus off and on Monday through Thursday, and I can meet up with you or make an appointment to meet up with you. I have an office there. I know there are evening classes there as well. If you wanted to meet up and talk about the class, talk about the business program, anything relating to EC3, possible internships, questions you might have, you can bring those up. We can meet virtually as well. There's a spot here on Blackboard. I can send you a link to meet and collaborate or Teams. If you're thinking about registering for upcoming semesters, I can help you with that as well. So all of those things are on the chopping block, right? And hopefully you are figuring out how to balance your work life, school life, family life, nice weather that we're having, right? And keeping it all together. So we're in week 2 of an 8-week course. Again, hopefully you are finding the reading exciting and the PowerPoint exciting. Try your best on the homework. And I will be on campus this afternoon. I'm heading there shortly. If you have questions, I will, or if you're thinking about meeting up, please send me a text or an email so I know that you're going to be on campus at the West Campus. But otherwise, have a wonderful afternoon, and I will speak with you soon.